On my wedding day, parents never paid the caterer as promised, so the food wasn't delivered. When I asked them why, Mom said, "You never deserved a fancy wedding." I collapsed. My maid of honor said, "Look at the security footage." What I saw changed everything. I never considered myself the kind of girl who needed a big, elaborate wedding. Well, for most of my life, I wasn't even sure I wanted to get married. My parents, Gregory and Diane, had made marriage look like a miserable life sentence rather than a partnership. They didn't fight in front of people. Oh no, they were too polished for that. But growing up, I lived in a house full of quiet, simmering resentment. My dad controlled everything, money, decisions, even what my mom wore to family events. And my mom? She just let him. I don't know if she was okay with it or if, after decades, she'd just given up. Either way, I swore to myself I'd never end up like them. Then I met Warren. Warren was everything I never thought I'd have. Steady, kind, and unbelievably patient. He listened to me like I was the only person in the room. He made me feel like I could breathe. Like I wasn't just someone to tolerate, but someone to cherish. He proposed on a quiet Saturday morning over coffee, slipping a simple ring across the table with a soft, "Should we do this?" I said yes. We planned a small but elegant wedding. Nothing over the top, nothing flashy. We just wanted a beautiful day with good food, good people, and no drama. That last part? That was the real fantasy. My parents, of course, had opinions about the wedding. "You're supposed to have a big ceremony in a church." My mom had sniffed when I told her we'd booked a garden venue. "Warren's family should be covering more of the costs." My dad grumbled when we mentioned splitting the budget ourselves. But the biggest battle came when they insisted on paying for the catering. "We want to do this," my mom said, her voice sticky sweet. "It's a gift." Warren and I were hesitant, but my parents made such a fuss that eventually, we agreed. "Just let them have this," Warren said one night as we lay in bed, his fingers tracing lazy circles on my arm. Maybe it's their way of making peace. I wanted to believe that. I really did. The morning of the wedding was beautiful. The sky was clear, the venue was breathtaking, and I actually felt happy. Jasmine, my maid of honor, kept me sane through the usual pre-wedding chaos. Misplaced earrings, last-minute seating changes, my Aunt Marie being a little too drunk before noon. Everything was going smoothly. Until it wasn't. An hour before the reception, Rob, Warren's cousin and our informal wedding coordinator, burst into the bridal suite, looking pale. "There's no food." "What?" I laughed, thinking he was joking. "The caterer never showed," he said, running a hand through his hair. "I just called them. They said they never got the final payment, so they didn't deliver." I felt a weird, detached sense of calm. That has to be a mistake. My parents paid them weeks ago. Rob hesitated. "They're saying they didn't." No, that couldn't be right. I pulled out my phone and dialed my mom's number. She picked up on the second ring, her voice cheerful. "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" "The catering," I said tightly. "The caterer says they weren't paid." Silence. Then, in the most casual tone, she said, "Oh. Well, we decided not to." I thought I misheard. "You decided not to?" "Well, honey," she sighed, "you never deserved a fancy wedding anyway." I actually felt my knees give out. Jasmine caught me before I hit the floor. "Are you there?" my mom chirped. I could barely breathe. "Why?" My voice sounded foreign, like it belonged to someone else. "Why would you do this? You always act like you're too good for us," she snapped, the fake sweetness dropping from her tone. "You're always running off with Warren's family, treating them like they're better than us. Maybe now you'll learn that family comes first." I stared at the phone. My own mother. My own mother had sabotaged my wedding, out of spite. I don't remember hanging up. I don't remember the next few minutes. All I remember is Jasmine's voice. "Look at the security footage." She shoved her phone in my hands. The venue had cameras set up for security. I pressed play. The footage showed my parents standing outside the venue, 5 hours before the wedding. A man from the catering company approached them. They spoke for a few minutes. Then, my dad handed him an envelope. And the caterer walked away. They didn't forget to pay. They paid him off to leave. I stormed out of the bridal suite, ignoring Jasmine's protests. My blood was boiling, my vision tunneled. My parents were sitting at a table, sipping champagne, laughing like nothing had happened. I slammed my phone down in front of them. They looked at me, looked at the screen, looked bored. "You stole my catering." My voice was shaking. Mom sighed. "Don't be so dramatic." "Dramatic? You deliberately ruined my wedding." "We saved you from making a fool of yourself," she said coldly. "This whole event is ridiculous. You don't need a big, fancy party. And Warren's family doesn't need to think they're better than us." I stared at them, my heart pounding. They weren't sorry. They never would be. Then I felt Warren's hand slip into mine, and I knew. I turned to him. "Let's go." The reception hall fell silent. Guests stared. Murmurs spread. My mother gasped. "What do you mean, go?" I met her gaze, my voice eerily calm. You're right about one thing. I took a deep breath. I don't deserve this. Then, hand in hand with Warren, we walked out. And we didn't look back. The entire hall was silent. No music, no chatter, no clinking glasses, just the weight of 100 eyes burning into my back as I walked away from the people who were supposed to love me the most. I could hear my mother's gasp, followed by the scrape of a chair against the floor. You are not walking away from this wedding, young lady. I kept moving. Warren's grip tightened around mine, his body tense beside me. I could feel the anger radiating off him, but he didn't say a word. I barely made it through the double doors before I heard my father's voice, sharp and commanding. Stop right there, Madeline. I did stop, but only because Jasmine was suddenly in front of me, her dark eyes flashing. Hold on, she whispered. Just hold on. She turned back toward my parents and lifted her chin. So let me get this straight. You two sabotaged the wedding on purpose. My mom rolled her eyes. Oh, don't be dramatic. We did what needed to be done. You paid off the catering company to leave, Jasmine snapped. How exactly did that need to be done? Mom crossed her arms. Maybe now, Madeline will think twice about putting some man's family before her own. I felt something in me snap. You have never been my family, I spat. My voice came out sharp, bitter, dripping with the weight of a lifetime of resentment. You controlled me, manipulated me, treated me like some burden, and you think you're entitled to my loyalty? Dad stepped forward, his jaw clenched. Watch your tone. Oh, screw my tone. I shouted. Screw every single time I bit my tongue to avoid a fight. Screw every time I let you make me feel like I wasn't enough. Screw you for thinking you had the right to ruin my wedding just to prove a point. My father's face darkened. This is the last time you speak to me that way. Something cold settled in my stomach. You're right, I whispered. It is. Then I turned, grabbed Warren's hand, and kept walking. But I wasn't prepared for what happened next. We barely made it outside before we were surrounded. Warren's parents, Deborah and Steve, were the first to reach us. Deborah's face was pale with fury, her eyes flicking over mine as she grabbed my shoulders. Are you okay? I wanted to say yes. Instead, I let out a strangled laugh. My parents sabotaged my wedding, so, I'm fantastic. Deborah swore under her breath. Steve, who was usually the calm one, looked like he wanted to punch something. They what? Paid off the catering company to leave, Warren said tightly. The color drained from Steve's face. That's when the guests started filtering outside, murmuring amongst themselves. Some looked confused. Others looked angry. And then I heard it. They what? I turned just in time to see Uncle Rich, Warren's uncle and a damn good lawyer, step forward. His broad shoulders were stiff, his face a mask of calm, except for the deadly gleam in his eyes. Jasmine was the one who answered. Security footage shows them handing off an envelope to the caterer. Paid them off to leave. Rich let out a low whistle. Oh, that's fraud. Warren's dad crossed his arms. It's more than fraud. It's intentional infliction of emotional distress, and depending on how that contract was written. Oh, I'll tell you exactly how it was written, Rich interrupted smoothly. Because I looked it over for you too last month. I blinked. You what? Rich gave me a sharp smile. I was just being thorough. And unless they somehow paid that caterer in untraceable cash, we can nail them for a direct breach of contract. And that's before we even get to the emotional damages. My stomach twisted. I don't want to spend the first day of my marriage filing lawsuits. Jasmine made a noise in her throat. No, but wouldn't it be so satisfying? I wanted to argue. I wanted to say that this was all too much, that I didn't have the energy to fight my parents on this. But then the doors burst open, and my parents stormed out. And suddenly, I was angry again. My mother's face was tight with fury, my father's expression carefully neutral. They glanced around at the murmuring guests, at the way Warren's family had surrounded me like a protective shield. And for the first time in my life, I saw something on my dad's face that I had never seen before. Doubt. Good. Mom's voice cut through the tension. You are humiliating us, she hissed. I laughed. Actually laughed. I'm humiliating you? She stepped forward. You will stop this nonsense right now. Rich's voice was as smooth as silk. Diane. My mom turned toward him, eyes narrowing. What? Rich smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. Would you like me to list out the legal consequences of what you just did? Or do you already know? For the first time, my mother hesitated, and my father's hand twitched. Oh, something clicked in my brain. I turned fully to my dad. You paid in cash, didn't you? His jaw clenched. I let out a slow breath. You knew this could go bad. I looked at my mom. But you didn't. Her eyes flickered. And that's when I knew. My dad had done it to punish me. But my mom had done it to ruin me. She wanted to break me. To make sure I crawled back to them, to need them. She wanted me to be hers. I took a slow step forward, my heart pounding. I will never need you again. She flinched. And my father? For the first time in my life, he looked at her the way he used to look at me. like she had gone too far. The guests were watching. Jasmine had her phone in her hand, recording. And Warren? Warren reached for me again, his fingers lacing through mine. Then he whispered, "What do you want to do?" And for the first time in my life, the choice was mine. I saw it in the way my father's mouth tightened, the way his eyes flicked to my mother like he was seeing her for the first time. He didn't know what she had planned. Not entirely. And that scared her. I could feel Warren's family closing in protectively, the murmurs of guests turning into hushed, stunned whispers. I should have felt overwhelmed, embarrassed, maybe even ashamed. But I didn't. I felt powerful. Because for once, I had nothing to lose. My father's voice was lower now, a quiet warning. "Madeline, let's talk inside." I tilted my head. "Why? So you can control the conversation? So you can manipulate me into seeing things your way?" Again. His jaw clenched, but it was my mother who stepped forward. Her tone was carefully measured, like she was still clinging to the illusion that she was the adult in this situation, that I was just a child throwing a tantrum. "Sweetheart," she said with the same fake patience she used when I was little. "You don't want to do this in front of everyone." I let out a breathy laugh. "Oh, I absolutely do." Jasmine stepped closer, her grip tightening around her phone. "You're on camera, Diane." My mother barely looked at her. "Put that away." Jasmine raised her eyebrows. No, a flicker of panic crossed my mom's face. It was small, barely noticeable, but I saw it. She realized she had lost control of the situation. But my father? He was still trying to salvage it. "We're family," he said, his voice smooth and coaxing. "Let's go inside and talk like adults." I stared at him for a long moment. And then quietly I asked, "Would you have done this to my brother?" A sharp, uncomfortable silence followed. Everyone knew the answer. My brother Jacob was the golden child. The firstborn. The son. He got their full support, their unconditional love. Me? I was the afterthought. The girl. The one who was always too independent, too emotional, too difficult. Jacob got everything handed to him. His college was paid for in full. His first car. His wedding. His house. Me? I had to fight for everything. And I had spent my entire life trying to be enough for parents who never saw me as worthy. I was done. My mother scoffed. "This has nothing to do with Jacob, doesn't it?" I snapped. "If he were standing here, if he were the one getting married today, you would have given him everything. But because it's me," I gestured wildly at the guests, the ruined reception, the absence of food. "You sabotaged my wedding." I turned back to my father. "So tell me, would you have done this to him?" Dad's face darkened, but he didn't answer. He didn't have to. We all knew the truth. Jasmine let out a low whistle. "Damn." My mother shot her a venomous glare. "Stay out of this." Jasmine smirked. "Oh babe, this is my business now." She held up her phone. "This little beauty is streaming live to my private Instagram. Only my closest 200 followers." She grinned. "Including Jacob's wife." My mother paled. I turned to Jasmine. "You did what?" She shrugged. "You said you wanted to do this in front of everyone." My father exhaled sharply through his nose. "Enough." His tone was different now, less controlled, more frustrated. "This has gone far enough." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, now it's gone too far?" "I won't stand here and be humiliated like this," he said tightly. I folded my arms. "Then leave." My mother actually gasped. "Excuse me." "You heard me." I lifted my chin. "Get out. Both of you." My dad stared at me, his nostrils flaring, and then he did something that shook me to my core. He looked at my mother. Not a glance. Not a brief flick of his eyes. A full considering look. Like, for the first time in their entire marriage, he was questioning her. A chill ran through me. Because suddenly I realized something. My mother might have sabotaged my wedding. But she may have just sabotaged herself too. The murmurs around us grew. Guests were whispering. Warren's family was tense. And Jasmine was still holding her damn phone up like she was broadcasting a presidential debate. My father ran a hand over his mouth, exhaling slowly. Then he looked at me. "This is what you want." My chest was heaving, my heart pounding. What did I want? I wanted to hurt them. I wanted to make them pay for what they did. But most of all, I wanted to be free. I lifted my chin. "Yes." My father stared at me for a long time. Then, to my complete shock, he turned to my mother and said, "We should go." Her eyes widened. "What?" "This is done," he said. His voice was different now. Quieter. Tired. "She's made her choice." Mom let out a sharp, disbelieving laugh. "Gregory." "No," he shook his head. "We're leaving." For the first time in my life, he didn't back her up. And that? That shook her more than anything I had said. Mom's eyes darted around, frantic now, realizing she was losing. "We paid for this wedding." "No, you paid to sabotage it," Jasmine interrupted gleefully. "And you didn't even do a good job." I bit back a laugh. Mom turned back to me. You'll regret this, she said, her voice lower now, desperate. Maybe she thought I'd back down. Maybe she thought I was still the little girl who would do anything for their approval. But I wasn't. I looked her straight in the eye and said, no, I won't. And just like that, my father turned. And for the first time in his entire life, he walked away from my mother first. My mother stood frozen, her mouth slightly open, like she couldn't believe what had just happened. For a split second, I thought she might turn around and follow him. But then her gaze snapped back to me, filled with nothing but cold fury. This isn't over, she whispered. I met her eyes. I know. She didn't say another word. She turned. And she left. The silence stretched long after the doors slammed shut behind them. I exhaled shakily, my entire body trembling. And then Warren gently cupped my face, his thumb brushing my cheek. Are you okay? I let out a soft, breathless laugh. I have no idea. Jasmine clapped her hands together. All right, so what now? I turned, looking at the guests. At my friends. At the people who had actually shown up for me. And then, slowly, a grin spread across my lips. The second my parents disappeared through the doors, the weight in my chest lessened. But it didn't disappear. My body was still vibrating with leftover adrenaline, my hands shaking slightly as Warren held on to me. The murmurs of the guests buzzed in my ears. Some people looked outright as scene-dollized. Others were staring like they had just watched the best reality TV episode of the year. Jasmine, of course, looked thrilled. Well, she announced, slipping her phone into her dress pocket. That was more satisfying than I ever could have imagined. Deborah, Warren's mom, sighed heavily, rubbing her temples. Sweetheart, she said gently, I know you're trying to keep it together, but do you need a drink? I let out a weak, breathy laugh. God, yes. She grabbed a bottle of champagne straight off a nearby table and popped it open before handing it to me. I took a long, unladylike gulp straight from the bottle. That's when Uncle Rich cleared his throat. All right. Who's ready to talk about legal options? Warren groaned. Rich, can we have 1 second before we start drafting lawsuits? Rich looked genuinely confused. Why? This is the perfect time. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand. Legally speaking, what can we do? His eyes lit up. Well, he started, shifting into full lawyer mode. We have a direct breach of contract, considering they took over the catering payment and then deliberately voided the agreement. We also have potential fraud, depending on how they negotiated the refund from the caterer. If they got their money back under false pretenses, we could be looking at a criminal offense. Jasmine whistled. Damn. I knew Diane was a snake, but I didn't think she was that dumb. Rich grinned. She was counting on no one pushing back. Classic case of overconfidence. And if we really want to push it, we could argue for emotional damages. I don't want to drag this out, I interrupted. My voice was firmer than I expected. I don't want this hanging over my head for months. I just want to be done with them. Rich sighed. Fair. But if they try anything else, let me know immediately. Oh, they definitely will, Jasmine muttered. I didn't doubt it. My mother didn't take humiliation well. I took another swig of champagne and exhaled. Okay, we have no food. No caterer. Half our guests look like they're debating whether to leave or grab popcorn. Warren laced his fingers through mine. What do you want to do? That was the second time he had asked me that tonight. And it was the second time I realized just how little I had ever been allowed to make my own choices. I looked around the venue. The decorations were still beautiful. The DJ was still here. The open bar was still stocked. And suddenly, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I turned to Jasmine. How fast can you order an ungodly amount of pizza? Her eyes widened. Then a slow, delighted grin spread across her face. Oh, well, yes. It took about 15 minutes for the word to spread. The wedding was still on. But it wasn't going to be formal. It wasn't going to be perfect. It was going to be chaotic as HL. And somehow, that felt so much better. Within an hour, the entire vibe had shifted. The guests who had stuck around weren't here for a reception anymore. They were here for a party. Jasmine had managed to get 3 local pizza places to send over everything they had available, plus extra from a food truck she flagged down on the way back. Someone had found a stash of paper plates in the venue's kitchen. The bartender had started mixing drinks with wild abandon. And me? I was laughing. For the first time all day, I wasn't tense. I wasn't waiting for the next disaster. I was eating a slice of greasy pepperoni pizza in my wedding dress, barefoot on the dance floor, surrounded by the people who had actually chosen to stay. And it felt incredible. Jasmine plopped down next to me, holding a plate stacked with 3 slices of pizza. Okay, I have an update. I raised an eyebrow. Good or bad? She grinned. Depends on how petty you're feeling. I smirked. Go on. She leaned in conspiratorially. So, remember how I live-streamed the whole thing? I groaned. Oh God. Oh honey. She giggled. It gets better. She waved her phone at me. Your brother's wife saw everything. My eyes widened. No, yes. She cackled. And she sent it to Jacob. Warren, who had been mid-sip of his drink, choked. Wait, your brother knows? Jasmine nodded excitedly. Not only does he know, but… She paused for dramatic effect. He just texted me. I almost dropped my plate. I hadn't spoken to Jacob in months. My parents had always pitted us against each other, made sure he never saw just how differently they treated me. He had never been cruel to me, but he had been distant, unwilling to get involved. And now, he had seen the truth. I swallowed hard. What did he say? Jasmine cleared her throat dramatically and read aloud. Jacob, what the HLL did Mom and Dad do. I let out a slow breath. So, he actually believes it. Jasmine gave me a look. Honey. He watched it. Warren squeezed my hand. Are you going to respond? I hesitated. Because for the first time ever, I had the upper hand. And I wasn't sure what to do with it. Then, before I could make a decision, Jasmine gasped. Oh crap. I turned. What now? She shoved her phone in my face. And my stomach dropped. Because right there on the screen was a text from my mother. And it said, you think this is over? You have no idea what's coming. I stared at the screen, my blood running cold. Jasmine's eyes were huge. Oh, HLL no. Warren's arm tightened around me. She wouldn't. I swallowed hard. She would. And suddenly, the night didn't feel so carefree anymore. Because my mother wasn't just angry. She was plotting something. And I had no idea what was coming next. I exhaled slowly, my hands tightening around my phone. My mother had always been vindictive, but something about that message sent a chill down my spine. She wasn't just furious. She was planning something. Jasmine leaned in, her voice low. Okay, how bad do we think this is? Warren's jaw tightened. With Diane? Very. Deborah, Warren's mom, let out a sharp breath. What exactly can she do? She already ruined the catering. What's left? Steve, Warren's dad, frowned. Unless she's planning to make a scene. That's when Jasmine's phone buzzed again. Her eyes flicked to the screen. Then she cursed. What? I demanded. She turned her screen toward me. And I felt my stomach drop. Because right there, on the group chat my mother had with our extended family, was a message in all caps. We need TO talk. Madison has betrayed her family. Oh, so she was going nuclear. She's trying to turn the family against you, Warren muttered. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Of course she is. Jasmine groaned. This woman is obsessed with control. My phone buzzed. A call from Jacob. My heart pounded. I stared at the screen, debating whether to answer. Then, before I could decide, Jasmine swiped the call and held the phone to my ear. Tuck, she whispered. I shot her a glare but took a deep breath. Hello. Jacob's voice was quiet. What the HLL is going on? I swallowed. Did you see Mom's message? Yeah. Which is why I called you first. That stopped me in my tracks. Because never in my life had Jacob questioned our parents first. Maybe things were changing. I didn't hold back. I told him everything. How our parents sabotaged the catering. How they thought I didn't deserve my wedding. How Mom had paid off the company and then tried to make it my fault. By the time I was done, Jacob was silent. Then he exhaled sharply. Jesus Christ. Yeah. You're sure about this? Jasmine has it on video. Jacob cursed. Okay. Let me deal with Mom. I'll talk to the rest of the family before she poisons them against you. I blinked. You'd do that. She went too far, Maddie. His voice was firm. She thinks she can control everything. But she's about to find out she's wrong. And with that, he hung up. Jasmine nudged me. Well, I swallowed. He's on my side. Deborah let out a relieved sigh. That's a good start. Steve nodded. But Diane's not going to go down without a fight. He was right. I needed to end this. I needed to take away my mother's power for good. And suddenly, I had a plan. The next morning, while Warren was still asleep, I grabbed my laptop and started typing. By the time he woke up, I had written everything. Every manipulation. Every guilt trip. Every cruel comment. Every way my mother had tried to control my life. And at the very end, I added the final nail in the coffin. Yesterday, my parents sabotaged my wedding out of spite. They paid off the catering company to leave. They wanted to humiliate me. But instead, they revealed who they really are. And I refused to stay silent any longer. Then, without hesitation, I hit post. It didn't take long. By noon, the post had exploded. Friends, extended family, even Jacob's wife had commented. Some people were furious on my behalf. Some were in shock. And some had stories of their own. Cousins, aunts, even old friends of my parents. My mother had spent decades controlling people, manipulating them, making them feel small. And now, her entire reputation was crumbling. Jacob called me again that afternoon. Mom's losing it, he said bluntly. She's calling everyone, trying to do damage control. But it's not working. I bit my lip. Dad, a pause. Then quietly he said, I think he's done. I asked in a breath. Jacob continued, Mom always thought she could get away with everything. But this time, there are consequences. I closed my eyes. She's going to hate me for this. He let out a short, bitter laugh. Maddie, she already did. I swallowed hard, but I knew he was right. And for the first time, I was okay with it. 2 days later, I got a text from my father. I'm sorry. It wasn't much, but it was something. And my mother? She never reached out again. Maybe she knew she had lost. Maybe for the first time in her life, she realized she wasn't in control anymore. And that was the best revenge I could have ever asked for. A week later, Warren and I threw a second celebration. This time there were no formalities. No stress. No expectations. Just food, music, and the people who actually loved us. And as I stood there, surrounded by my real family, Warren's arms wrapped around me, I realized something. I hadn't lost anything. I had won. And I had never felt more free.